Let's take a closer look at the design panel in the new reporting module. So starting on the right-hand side, you'll see we have the component palette over here. It works very similar to the component palette you'll see when designing a window. You can do a little search up here to get all your charts or what other component you're looking for. You can collapse all of or just some of the different sections in here if you like. Let's take a look at some of the components. We got our table here. It's very similar to the table in the last version of the module. Works functionally identical. We got a simple table. We have a barcode component, which you can specify different barcode formats. An image component, so you can go ahead and take any images that you've already imported into the image management tool and just show them here. A couple different charts. Got an XY chart. We have a pie chart. Then we have some different shapes too. So, for example, we have the text shape, which is very similar to just a label when designing a window. So just put anything you want in there and format it differently. You also have like a little pencil drawing tool and then like a line tool and a couple other shapes just if you need to draw some images down. Next, let's take a look at the key browser over here. We already saw this in action in a previous video here, so we have our parameters and data sources. There's one important property I wanted to show you though, is this show calculations property. If you take a look at our data sources, you see that we can drill down all the way to each column. But if we set show calculations to true, we come back into here, you'll see first off we have a count. Now count is just a total of the number of rows in your data source there. There are also some additional built-in keys here. So for each column, we can do like whatever values on that column, or the total of all the values in that column, the average, the max value, the minimum value, running total, running average, and these are available for each column that you bring in once show calculations is set to true. So very important to remember that property. It comes in handy quite a bit. And you'll notice there's also this built-in folder. Now we won't go into this in too much detail here. We'll have more to talk about in a later video, but these are just some built-in keys you can always use with a report. We'll talk about them later though. And the last thing I wanted to show you was the property inspector. This is very, very similar to the property editor when designing a window. A lot of the same functionalities there. You'll notice that whatever you have selected, so let's say I'll select the entire page, you have properties for that page. If you take a look at each property, you'll see there's no binding icon though. Now that doesn't mean you can't bind something to these, it just works a little bit differently. So for example, if we come to our parameters here, we can take fruit and we can set the fill property to be equal to whatever fruit is. And you'll note there's that little chain link icon there to let you know that there's a binding here. Now, if you go ahead and click on the value, you'll see that there's there's a binding here. There's this little magnifying glass that comes up, and it's just another version of the key browser, so you can drill down and change whatever this binding is set to here. Now, it doesn't really make much sense to have our fill be equal to apple in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this binding. Just right-click on the property name and click on Use Static Value, and now it's gone back to normal. Now, another important thing to note about the property inspector is that certain components actually have not only unique properties, but they actually have an additional tab in the property inspector. First of all, let's go ahead and select the entire report itself, and you'll see there's a paper settings. Let's go ahead and move this up here. There we go, so you can see it a little bit better. So you can set, paper size and width, dimension, orientation, etc., for the entire report. But this properties tab is always here, so you can change these properties if you need to. But these additional tabs that come up are unique to each component that has one. So the table, for example, has one. So it has a configure table, has a data key or a data source you need to specify for the table to use, any groupings, a couple other options here that we'll talk about later. The barcode component allows you to specify a format here, so you can do a data matrix instead with the configure barcode tab, and then you can also do the XY chart has its own options. So as you probably saw earlier, the text shape. So this will just allow you to enter in text, and you can change, make it bold or italicized, change the color of it. But note some of these properties too, you can also come over to the properties tab and set. So like the text color you can set here as well as the font, so it's already bold and italic because of what I changed the changes I made on the edit text tab over here. So you can see this is very similar to designing a window.